G'day you mob, Pete here, your host. Welcome to this episode of Aussie English. Today is an interview episode where I have the absolute pleasure of interviewing my friend Anthony Elorrioroz. So he is originally from France. He moved out to Australia, I think about 8-10 years ago actually, and he has done so much since coming to Australia. He came over here on a working holiday visa. He ended up getting his PR, he got sponsored. He then got his citizenship. So we talk about that and what that process was like, studying for the Ielts, how he learnt English because he ended up coming to Australia with very little English. And then more recently, he's been traveling all over the place through Australia. He ended up escaping from New South Wales just before the borders originally were closed during COVID and went on an amazing 109-day motorbike solo tour of the interior of Australia. He did a heap. He since went on a 1,600 kilometer bike ride on a bike this time, not a motorbike, around Tasmania. So it's an absolutely awesome interview. I think you're going to get a lot out of it. And he shares his tips with you guys too if you're thinking about doing these kinds of adventures when coming down under. So without any further ado, guys, slap the bird. Let's get into it. Comment ça va, mon ami?
Ouais, ça va et toi?
Très bien, mais il y avait beaucoup de temps depuis que j'ai parlé français.
Ah bon,
How are you going, dude?
I thought we were gonna do it in French.
No, oh, man, fuck that. it'd be a short conversation if we were speaking in French.
Already? You're still practicing now?
No, I haven't in a long time. Like
Oh.
it's weird. It's one of those things where I can hear and understand most things, but because I haven't had anyone to speak it with in so long, what is it you say? Fluidité, no?
Yeah.
It just completely disappears. And Portuguese, because eu falo português em casa agora, I speak Portuguese at home.
Yeah.
It's just taken over. And so like as soon as I was speaking Portuguese all the time, it started, if I tried to speak French, Portuguese would enter and try and take over. And so it was so embarrassing because a lot of the time I would meet people and be like, oh, comment ça va? And they'd be like, wow, you've got a great accent. You must speak really well. And then I'd be like, je ne, fuck.
Oh, you did. Like I remember when we were chatting back in Melbourne, like we could like talk for alpha.
I know. Well, it was fun. And that's the weird thing. The amazing thing with language is how quickly it disappears.
If you stop practicing and using it,
it atrophies. It's like going to the gym, I think.
Exactly.
Right? Where,
exactly.
you don't realize, and it's happened to me. Like my muscles since becoming a dad. So anyway, should we get into it?
Yeah, sure.
And how do I pronounce your surname? I always. Is there a shortcut to it?
Elorrioroz.
Elorrioroz.
Yeah,
so
perfect.
it'd be like Elorrioroz in Australian English, right? All right, let's do it. G'day, you mob. How's it going? Welcome to this episode of Aussie English. Today I have Anthony Elorrioroz on the podcast. I had to get in quick. He just told me how to pronounce his name correctly. So I'm like, I've got to say it fast. Say it no. So Anthony's originally from France, and we would have met in, I think, probably 2013, 14. When did you come to Melbourne?
Yeah, well, it was 2013.
Yeah.
14.
So you were living across the road in a share house.
I was across the road about 2015 for a couple of years, I think.
Yeah.
So that's when we met. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were living on, it was Dryburgh Street, right? In North Melbourne.
You were, Flemington Road for me, and you were the next street to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so I wanted to get you on because you have been, besides obviously, we can talk about your migration story to Australia and learning English and getting used to everything. You've been on some really, really incredible trips that I've kind of been perving on during lockdown and everything in Victoria.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you want to start with how and why you ended up deciding to come to Australia from France?
Yeah. It all started, I don't know, I think I was 21 at that time, so I just wanted to go and see something different. And I was looking at option at that time and probably America or like the main point was an English country to try
Yep.
to learn English. And then I think at the time we ended up with a friends being like, oh, why not Australia? And seems easy. Like you can get the working holiday visa for a year, which is very good if you want to learn a language.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's how I ended up in Australia. What
Ha-
was supposed to be a year of working holiday, traveling and backpacking around ended up being, I think, 8.5 years now. So
8.5 years, yeah. So, and is there any what would you say? Is there any will to go home ever, or Australia is your home now? Because sometimes you meet people who've come and done the working holiday visa, like Margaret, our friend Margaret,
yeah,
right, where she sort of had plans of kind of staying in Australia, potentially long term, and then on a dime, she's just like, yeah, moving to Norway, and so it's almost like she has one foot in Australia and one back in Europe. She was
uh,
originally from Estonia, but yeah.
I think you always have one. I think it's very hard to just be like, people always ask me, even more when I'm traveling, like I've been doing the last year.
Mm-hmm.
People are very curious, being like, oh, so Australia is your home, you're going to stay here forever. And you're like, well, forever, it's a big statement. I don't know. I like it so far, and I don't see myself going back home.
Do you have PR, permanent residency now, or a
Citizen.
citizen?
Yeah,
Wow. Okay,
yeah.
sweet. Oh, and
So,
you can go home whenever you want, right?
so
And
I
then,
can go. Yeah, well, not with COVID lately, but
yeah,
yeah,
and not cheaply.
not cheaply, and not with what happened in Australia last year. But yeah, now I can go back home. But it's always a thing you don't know. Like
Mm-hmm.
in 5, 10 years, family could make you want to go back more, spend more time in France, or. But at least I got the freedom, I guess, now to go and back
Yeah.
because I've got the dual citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good thing.
That must be a pretty enviable place to be for most people that are, well, most French people coming to Australia, right? The people you interact with, and you're just like, yeah, I'm already a citizen, baby.
Yeah,
And
exactly. When you met people from, like, I've met few people who've been backpacking, so they're on
yeah.
the second year visa,
Mm-hmm.
trying their best to find a sponsor or find like the way to stay here longer. And they're like, well, what you doing? And I'm like, oh, I've been here 8 years. They're like, what?
Yeah, I don't have to worry about shit. I can get on
Yeah.
Centrelink. I can get on Centrelink if I want. The government will pay me. So what did you have to do when you came out? You obviously did the 1 year working holiday visa thing.
So I got here, and after few months, I found a job. So I'm a diesel mechanic, like mining
Yep.
industry kind of. And I found a job with a company. And after the working holiday visa at that time was you can't work more than 6 months with the same company.
That's right. I remember you had to, a lot of our friends, including I think yourself, had to move, right? You'd
Yeah.
stay somewhere for 6 months and then, oh, I've got to go interstate because I got a job somewhere else.
Well, it's mainly the company itself. So you can't
Okay.
be contracted with the same company for more than 6 months. So it could be 6 months in Melbourne, but if you want to go further, longer, I mean, it's another. You need to change company pretty much.
Yeah. Oh, so you could work at that time at least with the next door neighbor's company, the one,
Yeah,
across the road, but you had to
yeah.
switch.
You have to switch the contract and not being the same company. But
Yeah.
so I ended up. The company ended up offering a sponsorship like pretty quickly, actually, after like few months in it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, well, like
Boom.
7 months in Australia, everything was pretty. I was like, yes, I'll get it.
So what did you have to do? Was it just, chance, serendipity that they had the opportunity to give you that visa, or was
Yeah, I
it?
think that I think they were pretty, that they've been sponsoring other people in the past, so that wasn't something scary for them.
Yeah.
And then you just gotta, like, it's a contract for 3 years at that time, 3 or 4 years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And you just need to get like the visa approval. So you got to do the Ielts test, and then pretty much pay the money and show then you qualified. So I was qualified from all my diploma back in France
Yep.
to do that job.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of need to prove then they've been offering that job to Australian people, but nobody answered pretty much. And have the quality to do the job.
Is that to sort of prevent companies from only offering jobs to foreigners? You would assume because they can potentially underpay them.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So yeah, that was the point there.
So how did you prepare for the Ielts exam? Did you already have a pretty good level of English prior to coming?
No, I was like,
Tell us that
bad.
journey.
That was, yeah. So getting here was a funny part because I learned for 7-8 years in France, but you learn very the school.
That sounds like my French journey at school. It was like, oh yeah, I did 6 years, but
Yeah.
I probably, when I started studying again, as you'll probably remember, I got to a point where I was fluent, but it took probably 3 months of self-study to get past what 6 years it taught me at school.
Exactly. And the will wasn't there. Like for my first probably 5-6 years, I was very much like, why do you want me to speak English? Like I don't need to. And then once I start to realize it'll be good and I was interested in it, he all like switched.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got here, I could barely order a coffee. You know, it was like, hey, how are you? My name is Anthony. You got 2 sisters, 2 brothers.
Man, sorry to interrupt you. I have to tell this story. So Margaret was a mutual friend of ours. She was from Estonia, came over to Australia, and I was living with an Estonian named Richard. Yeah. I think he's been on the podcast. And they had a group of Estonian friends. I'd never met so many Estonians in my life after, meeting Richard. I think I probably ended up, getting to know 10 of them, and 3 or 4 of them I still talk to on a regular basis. But there was one guy that came over with 0 English. And I remember they had this situation where he went into a cafe to get coffee. And I think he just walked up to the person at the till to buy the coffee and just said, "Want coffee?" and he was huge. He was like 6 foot something, a really massive guy. And the woman was just like, Jesus Christ, like, take it, don't pay for it, just leave. But I remember that he had no English, and all he knew was just coffee, want coffee.
Yeah. And you got to Australia and like so many choice of coffee, so they probably like, what?
I know, yeah, exactly. Don't ask, just give him whatever. Yeah,
just whatever. Cappuccino. Just
black. Yeah. So, what did you do in order to sort of get your English to the level it's at now? Obviously, where you.
Well, I started to take an English course for 6-7 months. So I ended up, I think, I went on the country, I think at that time, and looking for teacher.
Yep.
And I ended up finding like a American backpacker who was offering like probably 101 course. So I would go like at least twice, 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like it was like 101 will talk about, like she was very invested in it. So she would always set up stuff about what I like.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll just chat for an hour, or we'll just walk over like an article or news or something like that. And from then we started to study a lot about, IELTS is a lot of technical. So there's a procedure they want you to follow.
Yeah.
And once you've been doing a few tests from the previous years, you kind of understand where to go, what's the rules there, and
what they think you should answer, what they're looking for.
Like, and so that's pretty much how I've been getting ready for it. But it was very useful, like after 6 months almost of 2-3 hours a week of like private lesson. And next to that, I was going to work. So I would just speak with Australian or Irish people at that time a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And listening to the radio in the car, on the way to work. You don't, at first it's very like foggy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you hear a lot of things you don't understand. Maybe
it's almost like being blind, right? And then you slowly learn to see, and things come into focus. And it's almost like patchiness all over the place. You kind of have to get comfortable,
you pick
right?
one word there, and you're like, okay, I think I understand. Or watching movie with English subtitle.
Yeah.
So you read a lot at the beginning, but then start to fade a little bit, and you realize without realizing it, your level just go up the roof.
Well,
You're
I
like,
think
oh,
especially if you're absorbing that much, right? If you're just
yeah,
watching movies, watching TV, listening to the radio, and that's one of the biggest things I found with a lot of my followers that talk to me, and they'll be like, I've been in Australia for 5 years and my English is still horrible. And when you get down, when you dig in, it turns out, oh, well, they're speaking Farsi all the time, or Persian with their family and friends, and their
yeah,
whole friendship network are all, Iranian Persians who speak it. And you just like, the trouble is you need to get out of this.
yeah.
You need to affect it's just time spent, on task.
Because you can't, and that's the thing, you can't. It's something I thought I would do at the beginning. So when I first took on the job, I was with another French friend with who I came to Australia, and we were like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you know what? We're just gonna make it happen. We'll chat in English together, even if it's just us. No, that didn't happen at all. You'll try a bit 1 day, 2 days, and after it's like, just speak in French. And
Well, your brain wants to pick the least
the easy way.
difficult. Yeah, the easy way. Exactly. So, how did you go with IELTS? Did you have to do it multiple times? Or was it just a once off and you smashed it and you never had to do it again?
Not
Or?
smashed it, but I got it on the first time.
Good.
I think for that visa, it was you need to get over 5. So it's over, they note it on 10.
Yeah.
And you need to get at least 5 for each section.
Yeah.
So you got listening, reading, speaking,
Writing.
So, and if you got 5 or over for each of them, you're good, which I did.
Awesome.
So, yeah, no, but I think it's all the 3-4 months of just doing test and test and test and test.
So was it the most important thing there was just becoming familiar with previous examples for IELTS and practicing them? And then, it wasn't so much, I just go to work and I work on my English there. It's no, I have to specifically sit down and look at the exam.
Yeah, I think that at that time was like mainly just try to focus to get the test, because the test was the open gate to the visa and everything. So my focus wasn't necessarily on, you still learn English in the process because I was starting from scratch, but it was mainly like learning the procedure of the test to get it done and pass it. So, but it worked. So
how did you go getting used to Australian English? This was something I was always like, when I was learning French, it was French, and within that, it was kind of Parisian French, right? So, I wasn't learning slang from other regions or the different sort of accents and dialects there. But the idea of going somewhere like, say, Quebec, right, and trying to communicate with Quebecois, they speak French, but it's relatively different, right? And it's quite a shock. So did you have that kind of experience coming to Australia where you'd probably been exposed to British and American English, but very little Australian English? Or did you sort of practice a bit with Australian English before coming?
No, I didn't practice at all. I just rocked up here and jumped in. And the thing is, that's some people always said to me back in France, being like, oh, you'll see Australian, that they got different accent, different slang. But when you first got here, and I think for my case, like when I first got here, it was just your brain, like you say, just block everything.
Yeah.
And you just like, it's another language. You don't understand. I couldn't pick, like if someone was speaking to me, I couldn't pick if it was American, Irish, Australian, British. Like it was just, what are they saying?
I had that when we were in Paris, when I was doing my trip when I was probably 16. I remember walking into the hotel we were staying at, and the concierge or the guy running the place was chatting to some woman. And I was just like, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? He's speaking French to her, but she's replying in something that sounds like, I don't know, Swiss German or Norwegian or something. And afterwards I asked, I'm like, what language was she speaking? And he was like, oh, French. She's from Quebec. And I was like, I could hear your side of the conversation and understand it. But when she replied, I just had no idea. I was like, I can't, this sounds foreign to me. So it is so funny how the brain does that, right?
It is. Yeah. You just blocked it. But then after maybe I think it took me from when I got here, probably a good 6 months and up to a year to really understand and feel confident speaking in English, or feel fluent, kind of fluent. And it took me probably the same amount of time to pick accent.
To be able to like differentiate.
Yeah, like Irish didn't took me so long because I was working with a lot of Irish at that time.
Yeah.
So after a bit, I could really make the difference. And then American got there, and I was like, oh yeah, so that's not Australian, that's not Irish. Then by just eliminating, you're like, no, that's not British. It's more like fluid and up and down and like singing. So you get it there at some point, but it takes some time.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Like, because I imagine you'd be like that in France, where you would hear, I think France has dozens of different accents, right?
Yeah,
and then there are all the different French-speaking countries, and you don't realize how well tuned you are in your native language to pick up those accent differences where you're like immediately, bam, that's from somewhere else. And I can even, at times I'll be speaking with someone. Say there's a Brazilian woman who teaches English in the UK. And when I hear her speaking, I'm like, holy shit, she is almost 100% nailing the accent. But there's one or two things in there. And I'm like, yeah, you're not a native. And it's not even that she's mispronouncing sounds. It's that she's taken sounds from one sort of accent and brought them in, and she's pronouncing them correctly, but she's using them with the wrong kind of sounds for that. Like, they're not consistent. It'd be like if I was pronouncing, using American pronunciation at times when speaking Australian English, you would just be like, there's something weird going on here with his, it's not consistent. So it blows my mind. And that's one of those things I think that takes so long. Like, if I got back into French, it would probably take me years before I would be able to be like, listen to someone and instantly be like, yeah, he's from this place, or like that woman's from that place. Yeah. Whereas, I'm sure you can do it instantly, right?
Yeah, we can recognize. I think we've got already like the north and south of France, which north is a bit thicker accent.
Mm-hmm. Is that south. The Ch'ti? Is that where they're from?
Ch'ti, yeah. They're on another level, even higher.
Do you want to explain the Ch'ti?
Oh, it's I don't know. It's would that be like the bush?
Mountain people.
Mountain bush, there's Australian version of France, I guess.
Probably. Yeah, but they have like a really, really unique, I think, dialect, right? Where it's not just accent, it's words too, and slang and everything, right?
It's words, and I think even myself can understand if I was going there. So it's a mixed.
Have you seen much about Cajun French in Louisiana? I think it's Louisiana in the US. So they had a lot of French migrants, right? That's why there's places called like Louisiana and New Orleans. They originally spoke French there. So since the 1600s, since America was colonized, and it's this weird mélange of English and French. And they almost, when you hear them speaking, at least modern people speaking Cajun French, it sounds like they're just using an English accent, but they're speaking in French. And so it's the weirdest thing to sort of to watch and listen to, because it's just like,
I need to have a look. I never heard of it.
And they pull in so many phrases from, say, English and French. It's just so mixed up. It's just nuts. But yeah, it's still, there are still people there who speak this sort of I guess it's a Creole kind of language where it has a backbone of French, but it's since absorbed a lot of English as well.
Oh yeah, I've never heard of it. I'll have a look.
Yeah. Anyway, so how do you feel now after, I guess, 8.5 years in Australia with your English? Before we move on to the other stuff, did you ever get to sort of a point where it just plateaued and you're like, yeah, that's good enough? Or is it the kind of thing where you're still working on it every day, studying really hard? What's that journey been like where you determine whether enough is enough or keep going?
Well, I think it's hard to say. I think there's always, I still make mistake in pronunciation or like writing. And I guess with time, usually I can correct myself. Like I'll do the mistake, then you're like, oh, that was wrong, and get back to it straight on. I've stopped studying. That's something I don't know if it's the best solution, but I definitely stopped. But like you said, I think it's you get those waves of like, depends with who you hang with. So if I start hanging, so I was doing the food van, like back with my friends, working with French people, being with French, your English go down straight away. Like not necessarily in, like you think your mind's getting a bit more confused with switching fast, even if you can do it. But then it's like it's not as fluid as if you just hang with Australian people or English speaker.
Yeah.
And you only think English, speak English, write English all the time. I had that for a year and a half when I was in Perth, when I was only on the phone with friends and family speaking or writing French.
So just surrounded by English speakers constantly.
Just surrounded by English constantly. And I did feel it. Like I was like, oh, like I didn't have to repeat myself so often when I was chatting with people. Like it was always more fluid with conversation at the coffee or anywhere. And getting back here, like the last year and a half almost, I felt it the opposite way, being like, like a bit harder. I need to repeat.
Because you're in Wollongong, right?
Yes, I'm in Wollongong, yeah.
And you have a business, I think the Arrogant Snail.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a bit about that? And so, yeah, you're obviously surrounded by French speakers as well.
Yeah. Surrounded free French people, in a food truck of French vans, and we import it from France.
Wow. So you drive around just Wollongong selling French food, or is it you go around the country, or
no?
Not yet.
It's a slow van. It's up to 70 kilometers per hour. So
really,
yeah.
You guys are going to see this van too. I'll have to try and share a photo of it because it was How did you find it? It looks like this really unique, beautiful old truck.
Well, we found it on a French website. So we got it from France, imported it in Australia.
Wow. Okay. Jesus, that must have cost a lot.
Yeah, a bit, but I think it's been worth so far. We got something a bit unique. There is some in Australia, not that many, but there's a few.
I would imagine they wouldn't be cheap here, though. Yeah, they'd be collector's items, right?
Yeah, and people keep them. So people are either using them or keeping them. So, and I don't know if you've seen the French Dispatch. The truck is in it.
Oh, really?
The new movie, yeah. The truck is in it. I saw some trailer of it and of the movie, and
they have the same one.
They have the same van, yeah. So yeah, we got that van, and we just we paused it a bit for winter and COVID. That it's just been a bit of an hassle of trying to get that business running. So it's on a break at the moment, but we were driving around just Wollongong and Illawarra, so that's the area we up there, and just selling crepe, galettes. So crepe and galette. So galette is the savory version of crepe, and creme brulee. And we just been around, and I mean, people love the van. So it's always they're very curious and come around. And
there's always room for French cuisine in Australia.
Yeah,
pretty sure you would have probably experienced that in Melbourne, right? Is it Flinders Lane that had that French restaurant or small French kind of creperie in there as well?
Yeah, or the patisserie too, I think.
Maybe that was it. I remember there being a nice little place in there that was kind of tucked away.
Yeah, they got there, and they had I remember having that very nice patisserie, chocolate factory there. Was very nice. Like people were very they went full on with the stereotype. I think we tried very well dressed, very trying to be as French as they could. So
does that irritate you?
No, I know. I think, there's always part of truth in stereotypes.
I feel like if I were to go to France, and I guess what would the equivalent be of what you're doing here in Australia? To be someone selling, I don't know what, pavlova out of the back of a ute in France, and wearing thongs and being shirtless with a mullet or something, and people walking up and then being like, "How the fuck are you?" I feel like if I were to see that, I'd be like, "Oh, mate, you're doing us a disservice." This is not every Australian, guys. This should come with a warning label.
I think some French stereotypes are true, in its to a point. I think there is some truth in it, that's coming from somewhere, and so.
Did you, once you learned English, and obviously you were interacting with a lot more Australians over here, did you learn more about France and your own culture as a result, and sort of how it's seen globally, how Australians see France, as opposed to obviously when you're in France and you speak French, you can't really get that external kind of perspective?
Yeah, it all comes to all the time what comes back a lot. I mean, in terms of stereotype, I would say like arrogant.
That's not a stereotype. That's just true, isn't it?
That's true. Definitely.
Your business is called the Arrogant Snail.
That's definitely true. And I think it comes like in people like, the cultures beyond. People love the architect, you're gonna have to help
Architecture.
Architecture.
Yeah.
See, still making mistake and learning. And that's always come back. Like there's so much culture, so much history, the food, the cheese, the wine.
Yeah.
The wine is always a big one. It's always like, you're the French, you pick up the wine.
we had some mum champagne the other day because my wife got her permanent residency, and
cool.
It was pretty good, but
yeah,
very expensive.
Yeah, a lot of time, I guess, to
produce.
No, I thought you were talking like for her to get the PR.
Oh yeah, that took 3 years. Yeah. That was it was good to have that sorted finally.
Yes, definitely.
Awesome, man. So tell us a bit about you traveling around Australia. You've ended up seeing probably more of Australia in the last 2 years than the average Australian, to be honest. And it's one of those embarrassing things, especially someone with an Australian business and, based on Australian English. A lot of the backpackers see so much of Australia so quickly. So how did you end up deciding that you wanted to do to backpack around Australia and see these sorts of places? And what was the preparation like?
Well, I think it started from there was always that idea to a mix of project of like. At first, it was mainly crossing the Simpson Desert.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like get the bike and crossing it with friends.
The motorbike, right?
The motorbike, yeah, and
so
just crossing.
Wouldn't want to do that on a pedaling bike.
Well, some people do. There is actually an organization. They're raising money for charity, I think, for kids, and they cycle with like those big fat tire on push bike. Across the Simpson, but they got like all the 4-wheel drive assistance.
Yeah, you'd hope so, right?
Yeah, because they can only cover 80, 60K a day. So and it's 530, I think, to cross it. So you wouldn't be able to do it by yourself. I think it'd be very madness, pretty much. So yeah, it started with that. I always wanted to go back in France on a motorbike. That was a bit of a kind of dream or like a big goal that I always had on the back of my mind. But like COVID happened and like all those traveling country, full country, it's not something that's going to be easy to do, I think, for a bit. And like going back in France last year wasn't much of an option anyway, because all the lockdown was happening. So I was like, well, I might as well just spend some time and travel around Australia. And I lived in Perth, and I traveled all the South Coast back to Melbourne, lived in Melbourne, so I explored around a bit of Victoria. And I was a bit like, looking at my option, I guess, and being like, it's winter on the East Coast and all that side of Australia. And I was like, let's go north. Let's chase the sun and the warm weather. So I ended up, going to Outback, Queensland, NT, north of WA, and back through South Australia and
through Alice Springs and everything, right?
Through Alice Springs. Then I was hoping to cross the Simpson on the way back from my trip, but it was end September, beginning of October at that time, and
just too hot.
Yeah, it was. You could still do it. Some people with 4-wheel drive were still going out there, but being a solo traveler on my motorbike, I had to carry like an extra 16 liters of water, and was just getting a bit, I think, too intense and too risky to just be worth the try to cross it, to tick a box, I guess.
Were you doing it 100% by yourself, or was this in a group?
No, 100% solo
yeah,
and
wow.
unassisted. Yeah, so that was fun.
How do you prepare for something like that? Because that must be a completely different game when you don't have assistance, and not necessarily assistance in that you have a car with stuff, but you've got someone else there just in case something goes wrong, right? This is that kind of if you go swimming in the ocean, it's probably and like away from shore, it's probably
Yeah,
good to always have someone there with you, because if you have a
always as a
cramp or
body.
something,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, it's yeah. I wasn't thinking too much necessarily of that at the beginning. Like I was just planning and being like, it's fine. I guess not realizing how much like Australia can be huge and the Outback can be so very little population around.
Mm-hmm. I guess
So
to put this in perspective, sorry guys. So Anthony went on a 109-day trip, 17,000 kilometers, 300 kilometers on foot, and it was 96 days camping out. So it was a third of a year, right?
a third of a year, yeah, yeah,
So like
yeah,
4 months.
yeah, almost 4 months camping and traveling around, yeah. And I ended up getting what they call it, a personal beacon.
Yeah, an
So
EPIRB, right?
an EPUB, yeah. So that was my only like safety device, I guess, and I could get the best I could get. I think it's at that point was getting this device, and so it's something that tracking me, so that my friends had access to the website and could like check every day,
Mm-hmm.
like a little dot moving on the map, pretty much.
And if you get in trouble, you can hit a button, right? And the
And if you
rescue
get
will
a
come.
trouble, the rescue would come. So you got two kind of options where you can either just send a text to your friends and it's just like, oh, the bike breakdown, or I'm injured, but I'm not going to die in the next 48 hours or whatever. You just think it's not that important.
Mm-hmm.
And your friends have to call someone around or organize the rescue for you. Or you press like the big SOS red button. It's like, come, come as
The
quick as you
cavalry, yeah, the
can.
cavalry come,
Send the
right? Yeah.
cavalry. I'm
Did you
about to
ever have
pass
to
out.
use it?
No, no, luckily, no, I've never had to use it. No, no.
Ever come close, or there was there ever a time where you were like, oh man, this is getting a bit much, or I'm in a bit of danger here, or it was
no,
smooth sailing?
I think no, I didn't get to that point. Luckily, I never had to think about it. I think I always been, and I guess being solo, I was always very conscious of the potential risk I was putting myself in every day.
Yeah.
So there was time where I guess I would have probably, maybe go a little bit faster or go a bit further away, trying to in the bush or explore a bit more if I was with someone else.
Mm-hmm.
But being by solo, I was, I think, always a bit conscious of being like, well, the main point is to come back home alive and just see as much as you can, not just trying to go place where nobody goes or.
So is that the sort of difficult side of doing it alone? I mean, I'm sure there's a sort of aspect of just isolation and loneliness
Mm-hmm.
that is probably part of the appeal, but is there
Yeah.
also that lack of freedom for just being able to do whatever you want whenever you want because you're on your own, so you
Yeah.
can't take certain risks that would otherwise potentially be okay if there were other people there?
And being on the motorbike, it's, you fall, depends how you fall. I think you're very vulnerable. You expose yourself much more than being in a car. Like all your risks, like a car, you go on a 4-wheel drive trip or a van, you just load up, you can
Yeah.
load up 60, 80 liters of water. It doesn't make any difference. Where for me, 10
Yeah.
liters was 5 liters. Where do I put them? It's a lot of weight to hard on the bike. So everything is like bigger proportion than just being on a car, I guess.
So how much strategically did you need to sort of plan these things out in order to make sure you had enough resources? Because as you say, if you're doing this on a little motorbike, you sort of have to know where you can get water and food constantly, right? And fuel. Whereas if you were just in some big fuck off huge 4-wheel drive, you could pretty much, almost drive like 1,000 kilometers
Oh
without having
yeah,
to stop, and then have enough food and water for days.
yeah, exactly. Well, I think I started with just picking up the bike and just realizing how much weight I can put on. And by the setup I could get, like, just in terms of room and weight, you just define. If I ended up making the trip by knowing how much water and food I can carry, more than making the trip and trying to fit the bike to the purpose.
Yeah.
So I had that bike. I knew I could do. So I added a big safari tank, so I could carry 30 liters of fuel at the front.
How long would that last you?
So with the front tank, I could get 540K, which is pretty good for a motorbike.
Wow.
And I still had an extra 10 liters jerry can at the back. That's good, like in case of forgetting to fill up or not enough petrol station, but as well, like I guess if I have a big fall, I got up to have a big fall and I burst my tank in half or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I got that jerry can at the back where I can just do like another 100K to probably get back to the main road or get back to the closest town and like try to work something out from them, but at least you can get yourself out of a shitty situation pretty much. So that's how I ended up setting up. I was like, I got maximum of 41 liters of fuel. And then from then, just you work your way out. So every day, if you want, I did map out all the road trip before I left. So I took the map and do a little bit of research without pushing too much, but just like, oh, I can go that road that way. My point was I wanted to cross the Simpson, go to the Kimberley, and so Alice, Uluru, all these spots, going up to Darwin and then back. So that's how I ended up mapping everything out.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to start with the Simpson, but at that time when I first left, I've been very lucky, and every time when I came back, people were like, "Oh, chatting with people." There. So I left a day before the lockdown happened in New South Wales. So I left Wollongong and I rode on that day past the Blue Mountains and everything. And that same night, my friends called me and was like, "Oh, did you realize? Like, did you see the news? South Australia is closing the border to New South Wales. WA is closing, not Queensland, NT, WA, they're all closing to New South Wales." And my plan was to cross the Simpsons. So I had to be going through South Australia. So I was like, oh, okay, so I can't go there anymore already. So I was like, oh, I'm going to be stuck in New South Wales. So the next day I ended up just jumping on the bike, and Queensland was the last state I could go. So I just drove 800K up the border just to cross the border and save it. And I was like, Queensland is so big. Even if I get stuck in Queensland, I can just make a big trip out of it.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up, I've done all my trip backwards than what I thought. I was thinking doing the Simpson, then back up WA and NT and coming back down.
But you did it backwards effectively.
I did it backwards, yeah. But I mean, I can't complain. Like I was still like in nature and traveling around where people were in lockdown. So I mean,
I know. I kept saying that's when I was following it. And I was just like, "You son of a bitch." It was like, whilst Victoria was even worse, right? With lockdowns on and off and on and off.
Oh, and you had the worst time ever from all of the Australian people. Like, how many?
I don't know, 4 or 5 different lockdowns. But you look at how nuts it's going at the moment, and you're kind of like, in terms of numbers, if this was happening before people were vaccinated, it would have been a nightmare, right? Because the thing, that I see right now, all of the supply chains and everything are disrupted, and you're like, well, that would have happened. So even if we hadn't had a lockdown, we would have had massive problems with getting access to food and everything. So it's almost like it was you had to pick between a rock and a hard place, right? So
definitely,
but glad it's over.
Yeah. Well,
so
it's still happening.
Which parts of the journey were the best? Can you describe some of the stories or situations or things you saw whilst away?
The best, it's very hard. I think I was in that time, I was always so grateful to explore around, and it's very hard. Each state or territory's got their own like scenery, and they offer different exploration. And like, for example, you get up to an NT and it's like crocodile every waterway, and that took me a good week of, watching a river or watching something and be like,
Holy shit, they're here.
there is crocodile in there probably. And being on the bike again, you need to be that extra careful, being like any water crossing on the road. I was like very conscious of being like stopping, watching, like, how deep is it? Am I falling in the middle? What if a croc is around? And it took me a long time before, I think it's like sharks, people are very scared of shark because you don't know, if you don't know shark, or if you don't know snake, any snake you see, it's scary. But if you know which one to be careful and how to behave, you're not that necessarily that scared anymore.
Yeah.
Crocodile was so unfamiliar. I was like,
it'd be unfamiliar for me. I think the average Australian would be I don't know what to do.
What to do? Where to be careful? Is 50 meters enough? Like, where do I camp? Because I was doing a lot of camping. So
have you seen that video of the guys camping next to the this river? And there's an American guy wearing an kookaburra hat, and he's just like, so we're going to show you how to check to see if there's crocodiles in the water. And there's a guy holding a buffalo head, right? Obviously, they've killed and butchered this buffalo and eaten it. And he just swings it and throws it in the water. And the moment it touches the water, this huge, like 4-meter croc just goes out of the water, just launches at it. And you're just like, holy shit. It was just waiting there the whole time for any disruption of the water to just explode. And the guy on the camera is just like, well, I guess that's how you know, no swimming here. That was just like, holy shit. I would be packing my Dax the whole time. I think in the north of Australia like that, I'd be like, just stay away, 400 meters away from the water's edge.
Definitely. That's what I was thinking at the end. I was like, is that 400 meters is enough? Like, and I wanted to camp a few times, and I was just like,
nah.
Checking the map, is there a river close by? I may have passed one. I don't even know. And
you'll have to get a tent you can set up in a tree.
Exactly. Yeah. Like if you got a roof tent or a car, you just set you down. It's fine. But people in the NT are very like, I don't know. It's like, it's fine.
I think you get used to it though, right? Yeah, you're just like, you just stay away from the water. You can't go in any water effectively unless it's like isolated from the rivers and everything. Yeah. So.
Oh, there's a 4-meter there. Oh, okay. Yeah. And like you said, like you don't see them, and that was very impressive because in the north, close to RM land, you can go to what they call Cape Crossing.
Yeah.
So
this is where people are like fishing there, right?
Yeah,
and they're just hanging out, and you can see the crocodiles around. Yes. You're just like, you guys are nut jobs.
It's crazy, and you can see them like disappearing. They just go down in the water,
and
you're watching them for like 20 minutes. Nothing's happened, and after 20 minutes, you just see the head popping up like a meter in front of you, and he's been there the whole time. And
just to get a breath and then go back down.
And and you didn't know. And whoa!
There was another video I saw that from a sort of Australian bushman guy called Andrew Euclides, and he goes to a river somewhere, and he's just standing on a log, and I think they were spearing barramundi. And he just gets his camera, and he's just like, okay, guys, so have a look around, and the water's really clear, it's beautiful. And then he's just like, just as we were about to start spearing barramundi, he like looks downwards, and there's this, 3.5, 4-meter crocodile at the bottom of the water, just sitting there like this. And it looks like a log through the water. You can barely see it. And he's just like, and we're not going to be spearing here today.
I wouldn't go in the water.
So
no, for sure.
What are some of the other amazing things that you saw? Like I imagine there would have been so much wildlife running around. Did you get to see camels and stuff like that as well in the desert areas? Or
no, camel I didn't. Buffalo, snakes, so freshwater and saltwater crocodiles. It was like at first same thing. I was like, oh, freshwater, saltwater, what do they look like? Very different and everything. The scenery is amazing. I think it's very like the sunset in the Outback are so amazing.
Yeah,
like it's something. The night sky every night. It's something very different. The red dirt as well. Like that was very, very, very shocking. In terms of wildlife, definitely buffalo, crocs was the scariest things ever, I guess, like for me, just being like, and it's not like shark where it's just gonna get a taste maybe and you're lucky you survive and You just, if you're lucky, just missing an arm or legs, like, they're very vicious. And if they get you, you're done, you're over. Like it's,
Yeah.
so, but like a lot of waterfall, canyon, hot springs in Limen National Park, which is in NT. The scenery, it's always changing. I think that was very changing all the time.
Do you think it's a much more intimate connection you get with the land too if you're on your bike as opposed to in a car?
Yeah, you're much exposed to everything, like dust, sun, rain, wind. So you feel it. The change of the road condition is a big thing. Like people were like, oh, sometimes it must be boring because it's outback and in the bush. Sometimes it's just very long straight line of dirt road. But the road condition change a lot. So you got outback sand or deep sand or gravel road. And when you're on the bike, that affects you much more than the car. So
does that get tiring though? Because you must have to be so much more conscious of what you're doing, right? Like,
yeah,
when you're driving, you're still conscious, but you don't have to be focusing on every single rock that you hit or the sand or the depth of the sand that you're driving through.
Oh, it's physically and mentally it gets exhausted. I realized, and when I was doing over 400K of gravel road or outback road, I'll be very exhausted at night. Like I just be like, I want dinner and go to bed and a shower if possible, because it just. And the thing is, on the corrugation road at the outback, you gotta be at a certain speed. You can't be too slow, because if you're too slow, it just like yeah, exactly.
You have to get to a certain speed so that you time the jumps, right? You almost match the harmonics of the road so that the bike actually stays stable across or the car as well.
Yeah.
And if you're too slow, too fast, it starts vibrating like crazy.
Yeah. And on a motorbike, you end up, the sweet spot was 90, 100K an hour.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you actually have to go pretty quickly.
So you're going to have to go fast. So that's where it's all like very full on, because you got to get to high speed to just be comfortable and have a nice ride all day. But then you're like 100K trying to pick up rocks and pick up the next change on the road. So it's very full on. And so then you got to follow like camping car and caravan and four-wheel drive, so we get all the dust.
Oh no!
I mean, it's always been like a good, challenge and good day out of it, a good time.
Did you have any falls on those roads or any crashes or anything? Or it was okay?
I had a few near miss.
Near misses,
I had one where there was a huge ditch and on the side of the road, and I was trying to make room for a caravan coming across me in front of me. So I went on the side of the road, and there was a huge ditch, and I just ended up jumping over somehow. So lucky, but so I got very scared on that one, because I was just like 8:30, 9 a.m. I just left my camp, 10 minutes on the bike.
Yeah.
Just getting into it and just like, whoa, slow down.
Jesus.
A few near misses with how you call them,
Brumbies, okay, horses, wild horses,
in NT on a tarp road. So they
them just coming across and just trying to
crossing the road crazy.
Far out. I didn't think of that. Yeah, so you would have all these animals, because that's one of those things that I would shit myself in a car, especially if it was a horse. But on a bike, you'd be dead.
You'd be dead, yeah. Yeah, and I had a near miss that day, and I got there at the caravan park that same night, and I was telling it to the owner, and he was like, "Oh yeah, last week they took a guy on a motorbike. He's at the hospital I think he was in Darwin, because he like nearly passed." I was like, "Oh."
Far out. So what were the people like too? Did you get to meet some interesting characters whilst you're out there? Because I imagine that they're a different breed from those that you would meet in the city. And I don't mean that in like a negative way.
No.
They're often, at least from my understanding, they're much more informal, and they're probably also straight to the point. They're much less likely to put up with bullshit.
And it's so like, I think mainly in North Territory, it seems like they they got their own rules. It's a bit like it's wild, it's just like
Yeah.
people can do fireworks. I was there when they had the North Territory Day, so there was like fireworks, and I think they're just wild. They're just there in that around those animals and those big bush lands and vegetation where you could get lost, and they're just like, oh, yeah, it's the way here, like a bit like not cowboy. I wouldn't say cowboy, but it's a different lifestyle. Like it's more farming and more people that live in isolation or very remote places, so they don't have the same attitude toward life, I guess. Like it's very like, yeah, that's right. Let's go get some barramundi, and like they were fishing around 6 crocs in that river at the crossing, on a tiny boat, a tiny dinghy, and you're like, most of the crocs were bigger than the boat. Like, what are you doing?
I think you would just get so used to it, right? It becomes like this sort of, you take it for granted and you don't realize how dangerous it is when you're around it all the time, which is when accidents tend to happen.
It does, yeah. But it's a very intriguing place because it's, they got both very two distinguished seasons of wet and dry.
Yeah.
So I was there during the dry season.
You wouldn't be able to go through on the wet season,
no,
right?
You wouldn't, but it would still be very amazing to see like all those waterfalls that were probably going half the capacity or not even of what they can go in wet season. That's something like I would love to go back and like go on a chopper and just have a look at those big twin falls. And it's Tim Falls in Kakadu, just amazing. Like it's just wild, and they keep it very, like with all the Aboriginal community and everything, they keep it very, very like close to, you can't really go and venture around the park, which is I think good. Like it just preserve all the environment around.
Yeah.
So it's very amazing there.
I've heard a big issue is that they do that, but they don't have enough funding to deal with all the pest species of plants and animals. And so there's this kind of argument between whether or not, it's a good idea to keep all these places like that isolated without people being able to go in. I don't know enough about it, but it is an interesting kind of thing because especially in the NT, you don't realize how many invasive species are up there, especially the buffalo, which are a massive issue that they have to try and, deal with, and donkeys and horses. But you've also been on some cycling trips on actual bicycles, right? Yeah. More recently, I think you did the Great Dividing Range in the southeast, and then you just got back from Tasmania, where you did 1,600 kilometers around the island.
Yeah.
How do you find the bike versus the motorbike?
There is some common things, which like the weather, for example. Weather, you go much lighter than, I thought I was very minimalist with traveling on the motorbike. Then you end up on a push bike and it's even worse. It's like it's slower. It's good. I think it's physical, so you keep being fit and moving all the time. And it amazed me once. I think it's about the distance, I guess. So, you just reduce the distance. Like, for example, crossing across the Tanamai Road on the motorbike. So that's the road that goes from WA to Alice Springs. It's 1,000 kilometers, 800K without fuel, without fuel station, fuel service. And
this is where you see that sign, is it? There's no fuel for the next.
No fuel for next 800K. And you're like, oh. And like, if you compare that to France, it's like,
that's the country, right? The length of the country.
Like from where I'm from, I can go to East Europe with the fuel I had on the motorbike. Like it was just madness, like how big Australia is. Like there was few places where I spent a couple of days without seeing anyone. So just almost 48 hours without, you don't see anybody. It's very.
What was that like mentally though? I wanted to get to that for the big trip around Australia. You did 109 days effectively on your own. I mean, I imagine you had interactions with people here and there, but I don't know how good your phone reception was either, in terms of being able to just call up family and friends too. Was it a real battle mentally?
I think it's always challenging at sometimes, like it's up and down, it's when you do, I think I expected it, but it's as well the challenge and the thrill I was looking for. It's like being on your own and doing those days without maybe reception or like the choice to make by yourself and find out what you want, or like, it's like we were talking about risk taking or not, like it's end up just being your own responsibility. You can't really check and be like, oh, am I being stupid, or should I do it? Should I not? And
Well, it must be
so
pretty freeing as well, right? I imagine you don't have other people to worry about. You don't have family there. You don't have work. You don't
exactly.
have a phone constantly going off.
No.
You're not checking Facebook or
Yeah.
Instagram.
Yeah. No, it's there was definitely more up than down, but there is a few down when you can end up here and be like, oh, like what am I doing here? Like, you always have, I think, those questions, or sometimes it's more like about when you travel solo, it's mainly the missing fact of not being able to share with people.
Yeah.
Like you see something cool and you're like, oh, like that's a lot. Like I like to talk about it with someone after, or just being like, oh, did you see that? Like that's maybe more the down things I think about traveling solo. It's you not able to share as much as you would like. But on the other hand, being solo, you just meet more people.
Yeah.
So every time I was pulling up somewhere, people would come. And
well, you must savor those interactions as well, right? Be like, oh my God, people, let's have a chat. How are you? Where are you from? What's going on? How's your mother?
And people were so kind. Like people were offering me like, either like, oh, you must be exhausted. Do you want a cold beer? Do you have veggie? Do you want dinner? Do you want to eat with us? Or like firewood for the night? Like every night it was like, I think the first week I cooked once or twice.
Wow. Okay.
And every other time was people inviting me for dinner.
Yeah.
So that was like amazing. That was so good.
So how would you suggest to people listening to this and thinking, and this is something that I sort of suffered from when I was watching you do this. I'm like, fuck, I would love to be able to do these sorts of trips, but man, I could never do it. I could never do it.
Right.
Family aside, all of that sort of thing. I'm just like, why? Just, I don't know how bikes work. I don't know how to repair them. I'm sure I wouldn't be able to handle it. What are the kinds of things that you would say to someone who would love to do it but thinks they couldn't? How would you prepare for something like this, and can the average person do it?
I think so. Like I had some, I think it was like some positive from my side doing mechanics. So I wasn't that scared about breaking down in the middle of nowhere pretty much, because well, there is things I can fix, like stuff I can't. But I guess you got to trust like I said, I had the locator beacon on me, so that was my safety net. And I felt like, if you take enough fuel, I always had the same mindset. It's like I have my credit card and money to buy stuff if I need to. I had my safety device, and I've got enough water and food to last few days. And from then, I mean, the chance of like, I guess, something bad and dying out there is very little. Like if you restrain those things, then after I think anyone can do it. You always meet people, people are very friendly. If you break down on the side of the road, you got like 90% of chance, 99% of chance, I would say, then people going to stop and help you out. I would stop sometimes just to have a drink, have a snack, and people would stop. Do you have enough water? Do you have enough food? Do you want fruits? Do you want something? So and even more being in the Outback there, it's people knows what it's like, so they help each other. You may stop for someone, and that someone might stop for you 100K further.
Yeah.
So it's
what goes around comes around.
Yeah, exactly. So I think everyone can do it. Like I met people, like I met a woman who's traveling on a motorbike. Very cool stories. She's cool and sad. Her parents passed away last year or 2 years ago, and she found out their diary.
No.
And they've been traveling around Australia 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And she's doing the same trip. So they've been documenting everything every day with picture and everything. And she's been doing that on her motorbike. for the
Whilst with
last.
her being able to compare with her parents' her
So she's
diary.
just following the diary like day by day almost, and just
Wow.
doing that full things. And she's got no mechanical skill. She just left with a tent, and I think I can't remember. She must be above her 50s, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just amazing. Like,
Wow.
so I'm not the only one. Like, and sometimes I almost feel like, not I'm cheating, but I'm like, oh, I've got the skill to fix the motorbike. I'm not that scared about that. And I'm more like, impressed by people like her doing it when, like, if something happened, they just don't know.
Yeah.
Like, well, what can I do? Like, there is only so little I can fix, but they still go. So I think it's taking the chance and going for it.
So what can people do though to prepare for a journey like this? Is it the kind of thing where obviously learn the basics about how a motorbike functions so that
Yeah.
if you can fix whatever you can fix if possible. But then do you need to learn things about, food and rationing and obviously map reading and everything like that to try and get prepared as best as you can?
I think it's like any travel journey. When you do those big trips, you can't really plan everything because it's all going to change.
Yeah.
Like what I will do is sit up in my tent every night and plan my next day. So I would like, if I was feeling like doing 200K, I would just do 200K and maybe stop there and check a waterfall, check a canyon, or then you meet people and people are like, oh, you should go there. Like or maybe pass that one because it's not that super good. And in terms of food, you just, it's like I always had like a day or two of like tuna and very dry food to make sure I could just break down anywhere and have some food.
Yeah.
And then from there, you just stop to the shop. That's where it's a bit different from the push bike coming back to Tasmania, where you're a bit more limited with that. Like you can't just drive 50K out of your direction to go to the shop, because 50K is already a half a day or even more riding or cycling. So there is always a bit of planning, but I think you can sort out and just take the map. Where is the shop, next fuel?
Yeah.
Get your food and get on.
Is that normally on the map too? You'll have that just marked there, the shops and the food places and everything, or?
Well, most of small towns got a little IGA or general store. Or you can, or service station, like, or at least something that can help you out. It's not going to be any fresh food. Most of the time will be rice, noodles, tuna, something you can just pack. Doesn't matter the weather and the conditions. So that's what I've been living on for a while. I was just like eating, rice, pasta, tuna, dry food pretty much. And every time I would get somewhere where I could have some veggies and fruits, or like even just a bit of meat, I would go to the pub, buy a beer and have a pub meal, and off I go again. So no, that's great.
Awesome, man. Well, what's next?
Back to work.
So there's no other trips coming up or are you planning something in the near or distant future at all?
No. I mean, there is always trips. I've learned going to Tasmania, then you can cross the Bass Strait on a kayak. So I don't know.
Yeah,
that's something that seems very cool to me now. But
I interviewed. I think his name was Bo Miles. Have you seen his channel?
I saw
He's got a 4-part. I think a 4-part series of him doing it. Yeah.
I watched it this weekend.
That's intense. So you're thinking about doing that, are you?
Oh, I mean, like I've been watching it this weekend because I was on somehow on the Spirit, and I was like, oh, that looks cool. But that might not be. No, it'd be working, going back to France, hopefully this Australian winter, summer in France, to see the families and everybody.
God, that freedom must feel good with citizenship in Australia, where you're just like, I don't have to worry about visa bullshit when I can come back in if I can, if I can't.
And spend time away, like, because all those visas, all the time I had the visa, you can't spend more than,
that's right,
2 months, something, 90 days outside the country. So it's the freedom, the weight off the shoulders you get once you get even just the PR, I guess. Like, it's because the citizenship is just a small compared to
Yeah.
the investment for the PR, just a
Ugh.
small step.
It's not small. We spent $10,000 on it, paying the fees and getting a lawyer to do it. We waited 3 years and it just kept getting delayed. My wife had to do the medical exam, and that took a year because of the COVID lockdowns. It just kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed. Or she had a period and they'd be like, yeah, you can't do it because you're on your period. And you're just like, fuck me, man. It's the last step. It's the last goddamn step. Just let us smash it out.
Crazy. It's crazy. Once you get there, the citizen, you got the test, but it's pretty
basic.
Basic, pretty much. And then you're done, and it's a good thing. It's like, can she have both citizenship?
Yeah, I think Brazil's fine as far as I know. Yeah, she should be able to have dual citizenship.
Yeah, because I think some countries can't get there. Like,
I'm not sure which ones. I've heard that though, where you are forced to give one up. I think I don't know if Canada's like that. Yeah, there's some interesting rules out there for certain places. And I've got a dual citizenship with the UK, although I've never been there because my mum was born there on a holiday. So ironically, being born there, when you're from the Commonwealth, you automatically get citizenship. So yeah, it's funny. How did you end up in Wollongong, to sort of finish up here? I remember you were in Melbourne for ages, but yeah, you've sort of settled there, and this is just south of Sydney by an hour or two, right?
An hour south of Sydney.
Yeah.
Well, after Melbourne, I ended up going for work in Perth, in WA. Then I spent a year there, then quitted my job, then traveled the South Coast. Then my best friend always lived in Wollongong, and what was supposed to be just kind of a stopover and keep going up the East Coast and check Brisbane and Cairns ended up being like I think 3 years now. 3 years I've been here. So
yeah. How does it rate? Is it better than Melbourne? You enjoying it?
Yeah. I think I'm not a city person, so I think Wollongong is a good compromise between like the coast, the Blue Mountains, Sydney when you want to go and take the international airport. So it's been good. I think, and from seeing what I've seen around from Australia and Tasmania, I'm pretty happy with what Wollongong has to offer so far. So that's a bit that was as well, I guess, a point of traveling around Australia is keep checking if there is somewhere else I would rather live than Wollongong, Melbourne, or Perth. So Wollongong it is for another bit. I don't know, maybe a few years. We'll see.
Awesome, dude. Well, Anthony, thanks so much for coming on. And you'll have to keep us posted. You'll have to let us know if you find somewhere better than Wollongong, Melbourne, or Perth. Share it with us. But thanks, mate, and we'll have to have you on again in the future.
No problem. Good to see you.
Cheers.
See you, man.